Mike's on.
He's ready to go.
On the Fan.
New York Sports Radio.
Mike's on. Mike's on.
He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa
On the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. WFAN.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Come to you on this Wednesday evening, on this 10th day of June, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila, brought to you by those who drink it, as we take you right up until 7 o'clock. And we actually have an event to preview because golf will get underway tomorrow. We've talked about it the last couple of weeks. We'll have Michael Breed on to do that, as the PGA will start back. They'll play the first 4 events without fans. When they get to Jack's tournament, they will actually integrate some fans into the festivities. Again, small crowd, a lot of rules, but right now, golf goes without fans starting tomorrow, and most of the golfers have descended upon the Colonial in Fort Worth. It would always get a decent field, but it would never get a star-studded field. Now it's got 17 of the top 20 players. It's got 8 of the top 10. No Tiger, Phil playing. And Rory McIlroy, the favorite right now. McIlroy, the Rama, they're the favorites. We'll get to the whole, Koepka's there, but Koepka doesn't play that hard in these regular tournaments. He tunes up. Thomas is there, Webb Simpson, Fowler, Spieth, etc. We'll go down the line. But like I said, we'll do that with Breed in a couple of minutes. No real progress in baseball. Moving towards a drop-dead proposal, which we'll get eventually. I still think there's a better chance they play than they don't play. There's not going to be any happy people on either side when that happens. The baseball drafts tonight. Now, the baseball draft is so different, okay? Baseball as an amateur sport is so different. Baseball's draft is different. What we know about the players is so different, okay? When you get to the day of the NBA draft, the day of the NFL draft, you know everything there is to know about the top 5 players in the draft. You know everything there is to know about the guy who's going to be the top player picked in the draft. You know the top quarterbacks in the draft. You know there's players you've watched play. You've watched win big games. In college, if I asked you right now who the number 1 pick is, most people wouldn't know it. I know the guy's name. I know the guy who's supposed to be the number 1 pick. I don't know anything about him. I mean, I know I can read up on what they expect from him and what kind of profile he has. But again, that's all it is, just a name. They're all names. That's all it is. So and they do give the players a little more attention than they did in the past. And the event is covered a little more than in the past because all events are in this different time now where there's just such an abundance of information presented that so it is a little more expansive, but for the most part, again, when the Yankees and Mets pick tonight, there'll be a player, there'll be no reaction. Nobody knows anything about these guys. I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah, they can act like, oh, yeah, it's nonsense. Because these guys, that's the difference. The football players and the basketball players, they are not only promoted and marketed, they play on a very high level and they play on a very, very visible stage. Whether it's showcasing them in the regular season or in the NCAA tournament in basketball, whether you're talking about bowl games and just college football in general, I mean, you're talking about showing these guys off in a very, very big way. And that's the big advantage that the NFL and NBA have is that these guys are branded, they are marketed before they ever come into their leagues. While here, you don't know anything about these guys. Hey, could we just saw it unfold? Could they have been more wrong about a guy who came to the Mets? Could they have been more wrong about both guys who have come to the Mets in the last 2 years and came together from the same team? I mean, they didn't love either one of them. And look at them. They've both turned out to be tremendous players. One set baseball on fire. So we don't know. So, I mean, it's such a different process. It really is. So they're going to have the first round tonight. And again, it'll get a little attention because there's nothing else going on. But it's not the same thing. It's not like you would have with either of the other sports, only because of the way that what we know about the players and what the expectations are, and all the marketing and branding that's done with agents and with companies beforehand. Just a different world. Claudell Washington, like I said, we seem to do a lot of eulogies these days. Passes away. Young, 65. Here's what you think about when you think about Claudell Washington, who bounced around a lot. Okay? I mean, played for the A's, played for the Rangers, played for the White Sox, played for the Mets, played for the Braves, played for the Yankees, played for the Angels. He looked like a better player than he really was. And when you think about Claudell Washington, you think about him almost in terms of him being a better player than he ever was. The most amazing thing about Claudell Washington was, and the thing is, normally a guy on this type with this type of career, you wouldn't even really spend a lot of time on him. But there's no doubt in my mind that everybody listening who's a sports fan knows about Claudell Washington, knows Claudell Washington. Doesn't say, oh, I don't know, who the heck is... You remember him. But if I tell you right now that Claudell Washington never hit 20 home runs in a major league season, only once knocked in more than 70 runs in a major league season. Had some very big moments, had some big games. For some reason, and I could be wrong about this, I'd have to look it up. For some reason, I think he had 2-3 home run games. I know he had one. So for some reason, I think he had 2. Which is amazing when you think about it. I got to find out if that's true, because the guy only hit 160-something home runs. He had 164 home runs. But for some reason, I think he hit 2 home runs, hit 3 home runs in a game twice. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if that's right. But this is a guy who played 17 years. He hung around. Think about that. Think about how hard it is to play 17 years in the major leagues. You got to be a really good player to play 17 years. Claudell Washington was good enough to be in the majors. He was good enough to play on a lot of teams. He was good enough to get at bats on a lot of teams. He just wasn't a real star player. A normal year, hey, in Atlanta, he had 16 homers and 80 RBIs. For the Mets, he had 10 homers and 42 RBIs and 284 plate appearances. For the Yankees, he had 9 homers and 44 RBIs. 1 year, 11 homers another year, 6 homers another year. California, he had 13 homers. Another time in Atlanta, he had 15 homers, 17 homers. That was his career. But amazingly, he looked like a ball player. And he looked like a pretty good ball player. And when you, like I said, if I asked the average person, they would think, oh, Claudell was a good player. Did he make an All-Star team? He made 2. Which is not none. It's 2. But if you would ask me, did I think Claudell played 17 years, I would have said no. If you would ask me, had Claudell ever hit 30 home runs in a season, I think I would have said yes. He never even hit 20. Because I thought of him as a guy who could hit home runs. So I would have expected a couple of big years. And there weren't really a lot of big years. Like I said, the best year he ever had, he was a lifetime 278 hitter. He never hit, well, he did. He had 3 home runs. He had 300 once. For the Yankees, he had 308. In 1988 for the Yankees, he had 455 at-bats, 62 runs scored, 22 doubles, 3 triples, 11 homers, 64 RBIs, and he hit 308. That's a pretty good year. I mean, that's a nice fourth outfield of the year. Or /DH fourth outfield of the year. He could run a little bit. He had 134 stolen bases. He got some doubles and some triples. He got 334 doubles. He got 70 triples. He got 164 homers. He knocked in 800 runs. He scored 900 runs. And was good enough to hang around the league for a long time. So gone at the age of 65. All right. My switch hitters tonight. For Bernie, a 12-1 win over the White Sox on this date. 6-10-97. Bernie broke the game open with a 3-run homer in the 5th inning. His only hit of the game. He was off and flying in this year. 1046, 322 with a 425 on base percentage. For this year, for the Yankees, it was back to 1960. 1960 for Mantle. No, excuse me. You see, it said 1960 there, but it says, let me say, it says 60 where in one place. It says 61 in the other place. Let me see. This was 61. 61, they beat the Kansas City A's 5-3. And Mickey was off to a very good start. It was Boyer, Koepka, Maris, Mantle, Howard, Skowron, Bob Serve. If you remember, Serve, Maris, and Mantle lived together that summer in Queens. Bobby Richardson was down in the 8th spot. Whitey Ford was on the mound. If Whitey was on the mound, what happened a lot of time? Whitey won his 9th game already to go 9-2. He won 25 games in 1961. And what happened when a lot of times when Whitey pitched? Mickey homered. In this game, Mickey had a triple in the early in the game off Joe Nuxhall, and then he had a home run off Bill Kunkel. 17 home runs, 41 RBIs, batting .306, and his on-base percentage was .432. Maris was hitting just .227, but they had just made the switch to Maris third, Mantle fourth, which changed everything for Maris. He got hot after that. Got very hot after that. So for Mickey, he was off to 17 homers, wound up with 54, 41 RBIs, .306 batting average, .432 on base percentage. As we said, golf coming up. A PGA event finally, as sports starts to come back little by little. The PGA starts back at the Colonial tomorrow in Fort Worth. No fans, a very good field, and we'll talk about that with Michael Breed when we return. Let's see if we got a better line. Mike, go ahead. Let me hear. Let's hear.
That's
good. That's good. Okay. Now let me go to the beginning here. What will golf fans see that will be unusual? There's no crowd, but sometimes you don't notice that at some of these tournaments, unless you get to the weekend and you're right around the final holes. You can live without that part. What else are they going to notice that's going to be very different?
Well, I think what you're going to notice is a guy's going to make a big putt or a big shot, hit it in there close, give a high five to his caddy, or lift his hand up in the air after he's made a putt, and nobody's going to be clapping. And
right.
So I think it's going to be somewhat comical in that space. And I think, relatively speaking, that would be one of the fun things that you would see.
Are caddies going to be close proximity, or are they going to keep their distance from the players?
That's a wonderful question. And I look at this like the testing protocols that they've put in place are so thorough. You're not allowed on the property if you're not in good shape. So while I think they're going to try to pay attention to that, I don't think that's going to be the main focus. Again, just go into this. Hey, we know they've been tested every single day. When they come in, when they leave, they're getting tested like crazy. So I think you'll see caddies talking to one another. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where, like we saw in the match or at Seminole, where we might have seen them kind of staying their distance. This is a little bit of a different situation, and I think that the PGA Tour has done everything they can to ensure that those that are playing are in as safe an environment as they can possibly be.
Are the players gung-ho about this? Are they ready to go, or are they worried about things?
No, I think that they are excited to play. The people that I have talked to, the players that I've discussed this with, they know it's going to be different. But at the same time, you're talking about the competitive athlete that has been dying to compete, and it's been 3 months for them. And so, when you take these thoroughbreds and you ask them to go run, they want to run. And so I think that they're going to, I was talking to one of the players who's going to be playing in a tournament this week, and they said, look, you know what? I'm John Rahm. I'm only 4 years out of college. This is going to feel like a college event for me. They don't have spectators out there at college, and I'm okay with that. The one thing that I rely on the fans for is when I hit a good shot to a hole location that I can't really see, they would tell me whether it was close or not. But you know what? I'll find out whether it's close or not when I get up to the green. So I think what you'll see is a slightly different environment that way. The other thing that I personally, even nobody has said this, but this is what I think. You know this about sports. There seems to be momentum that happens, and momentum happens in a lot of different ways. I think spectators can create momentum for players. So when a guy makes a birdie and he makes another birdie and you got the crowd behind him, all of a sudden now things kind of change a little bit. I don't know whether we're going to see those birdie runs like we may see in an event where spectators are going to be there. But I think it's going to be very competitive. I think CBS will do a great job with their presentation of the event. And I think that the players are excited to play. It's going to be highly competitive. There will be players that have not necessarily put in the time like others have. And I think that's going to show up. But, a couple, 3 weeks down the road, I think you're going to see really, really good golf.
All right, let's be honest. DJ has as much talent as any player in the world. We all know that. But we also know his reputation, that he doesn't work hard, that that he likes the good life, the whole thing. So the book on him is just what you would expect right now. Hasn't done his work coming up to this. Do you think it's urban legend, or do you think it's true? And would you be surprised if he came out tearing up the golf course?
I listen, there's nothing Dustin Johnson does that surprises me. He's got so much talent that, he can get out there, get one swing and go, man, this feels great. And he can go on a run. So I would not say that he could surprise me if he plays well. However, what I would say is it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't play well. And if you look at Dustin, the area where, at Colonial, you need to have a short game. There's no question about it. He was not sharp with his short game coming into this week from this year that has been in existence now. And I'm not talking about the wraparound season. I'm talking about the calendar year of 20. His strokes gained around the green, 162nd. He's 106th in strokes gained putting. You know what? You can have a good offense, but if you don't have good defense, it's very difficult for you to win games as far as I'm concerned. Short game is defense, and that's the thing that I think that Dustin needs to improve upon. The question is whether or not he's put in the time, and I would be hard-pressed to think that he has. The other thing is that he comes in. So rule of thumb for me, I look at successful players on the PGA Tour, their birdie average is at 4 or better. And typically Dustin Johnson is at 4 or well above. He this year is 184th, averaging at about 3.44 birdies per round. And that just tells me that he's not sharp, neither with the putter nor with the iron play. And so I look at Dustin and I go, I think Dustin had work he had to do prior to this. I think Dustin's going to have work to do now that we're started up again.
All right, before we get to the logical guys who you would expect, like at the top of the leaderboard, the top of the odds board, like Rory and Rahm and Thomas, etc., who's the golfer this year? Who's the rookie you think could have a good year? And who's the guy you think is ready to break through and become a top 20 or a top 10 player?
That is a wonderful question. So let's take the rookies. And the rookies to me are really the young guys. I love Colin Morikawa. I think Morikawa is a guy who has a world of talent. He's got a beautiful golf swing, and he has a swing to me that is not one that I think is going to produce injury. And when I look at these players, particularly the upper echelon player, injury is something that I pay attention to, whether it's a wrist like a Rory McIlroy or a Justin Thomas had, or a knee with Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, etc. So when I start looking at players who I think are who are young, who are going to break through, Colin Morikawa is the guy that jumps off the page to me. The other guy who I like, and he's a guy who I've kind of had my eye on for a while. He's not necessarily as well known as in the States as he is in Europe, but Matt Wallace is a guy who I think is a world-class player, and he is so driven. I really got my eye on Matt Wallace. Now, who's the guy that I think is going to take advantage of this sort of break? Justin Rose. Justin Rose has come into this year, and if you remember, right at the Players was when he switched back his irons that he had played with TaylorMade for, I'm going to say it's over 15 years and maybe 18 years that he's been playing. He switched, and he was not having success. And clearly the entire year last year, and even into and up to the Players Championship, he was not having success. He's gone back to TaylorMade. He is a hardworking guy. He's a guy who like John Rahm, he leaves no stone unturned. And I think you're going to see Justin Rose really put himself in a situation where he is going to reemerge. And that to me is the word. Because if you look at Justin Rose right now, he's 14th in the world. He was number one at one point in his career. It has kind of gone sideways for him. And I expect him to really put things back together again and get his ball striking back. And if you take a guy who's had the success that he's had putting, and we've seen it with this switch of putters that he made a couple of years ago, and now you give him the ball striking that we know he's capable of, this guy who I expect to reemerge and really establish himself as one of the top 5 players in the world.
The guy who's very the odds are very respectful on is Webb Simpson, 16-1. Now that's when you realize Fowler's 25-1, Koepka is 17-1, Dustin Johnson's 20-1. Reed is 23-1. Okay. Webb Simpson's 16-1. They're giving Webb Simpson a lot of respect. Are they giving him too much respect?
No, I don't think they're giving him too much respect. If you look at all the things that Webb does, he drives it very accurately. He's not one of the longest hitters on tour, but is 7th on tour in greens and regulation. And he's averaging, remember I told you about that birdie average thing? He's 1st on tour in birdie average,
okay.
5 birdies per round. He's 2nd on tour in scoring average, and he's 6th on tour in money made. He's almost $3 million. Now, here's the other thing about Webb. He finished 2nd at the RSM Classic, lost the playoff there. He finished 3rd at Sony in Hawaii and had a chance on that final hole to make birdie and put himself into a playoff type situation. Then he won at Waste Management with rounds of 63-64 on Friday and Saturday. All parts of his game are really good. He's got a confidence that is it's as high as I've seen with Webb, and I've known Webb a long time. This guy has worked hard on his game, and he is a guy who believes, and rightly so, particularly after the President's Cup, that he belongs on these Ryder Cups. He belongs in the stage. He's a guy who has won a U.S. Open and a Players Championship. And let's not forget, the Players Championship he won by 4 shots, and he took a huge lead into the final round when he won the Players a couple of years ago. So as you look at Webb, no, I don't think he's at all overrated by any stretch of the imagination. He just doesn't have that game that, you stand there and you ooh and ah, distance or the club head speed or the beauty of a Rory McIlroy golf swing or a Justin Thomas or somebody like that. This is a guy who's hitting some hybrids into greens, but he is a guy who's got everything that it takes, and he's got the intangible, which to me is grit. He is as gritty a competitor as there is.
The 3 favorites are Rory's 6-1. He's a heavy favorite. Rahm is 9-1. He's a solid second choice. And then Thomas is 12-1. Those are the 3 favorites for the tournament.
So if I'm looking at this, my choice of those 3 is going to be John Rahm. I'll tell you why. Justin Thomas is a guy who then missed the cut, then finished 3rd, and then missed the cut, and then won, and then we had the break. And what I'm seeing out of JT is he's an all or nothing kind of guy right now. And I don't know what he's done during the break, whether he's had a chance to work on it or not. But I would say he's a little bit of a question mark to me. To that end, Rory McIlroy, as he went into the break, he had all the confidence in the world. The last 5 tournaments that he played, he's finished in the top 5. The swagger that he had was huge, and he won earlier in the wraparound. So you look at this, in the 6 events that he's played, he's won 1 and finished in the top 5 each and every time. But at the same time, he's the guy that almost feels like it's taken away from him. And I look at Jon Rahm and I go, okay, Jon Rahm is a guy who he's monitoring his body. He literally goes through a full body assessment every single Monday to make sure that he doesn't have anything out of order. He's got a very, very simple golf swing. And the one thing that Jon Rahm had to work on, and we've talked about this several times, one thing Jon Rahm had to work on was his attitude and being a little bit easier on himself when he's in the arena. And I mean when he's in the arena, for him, it's having a chance to win on Sunday. I think Jon has matured tremendously, and I look for Jon Rahm to have a great week. He's a guy who is on my very, very short list of people that I win.
All right, let me touch on 2 guys that the fans are interested in. Number 1, the guy who has to be regarded as the best player in the world, and that's Brooks Koepka. How seriously does he take this tournament? And then number 2, where is Ricky Fowler right now?
So let's take Ricky Fowler first. I think Ricky, he's gone to a new coach. He started working with his new coach about 5-6 months ago and working on a few things to try to get a little bit more consistent. We saw some brief glimpses of his success early in the year. He couldn't play 4 great rounds, but he has had a number of tournaments where he's had 2 great rounds. When we saw him at Seminole, he played wonderful golf there at Seminole. He was clearly the best player on the property of those 4 that were there. And I think Ricky is now feeling comfortable with his game. And earlier this year, I was down in Florida over at Michael Jordan's golf course, and I saw Ricky down there. He had been at Grove 23 for 28 straight days working on his game. So I look at that whole thing, and I think this is a guy that wants it. He does not want to be the Anna Kournikova of PGA Tour golf. And this is a guy, only 5 wins on the PGA Tour. And I know that he won last year, but at the time, it wasn't as if he won with a great Sunday round. It was kind of if you can call it a backdoor win. I don't know if I call anything a backdoor win, but it wasn't a really solid performance on Sunday. And I think Ricky Fowler is going to be back. I think Ricky Fowler, I've said this before, I think U.S. golf needs 2 players to play great. One of them is Ricky Fowler, one of them is Jordan Spieth. I think we're going to see Ricky Fowler play great this week. I don't know about Jordan Spieth. Now, to your question about Brooks Koepka. Brooks Koepka, to me, is a guy who performs when he has a chip on his shoulder. When Brooks has a reason, and we've seen this in when we saw Michael Jordan's documentary. Michael Jordan is the same way. He gets the chip for one guy, and it literally invigorates him, and he performs. Koepka's the exact same way. And I think Koepka is now at a point where he goes, hey, somebody took my number 1 status from me, and I'm gonna show you that I deserve to be the best player in the world. And I think the one thing that Brooks needs to do and will do is start to take these PGA Tour tournaments a little bit more seriously. I think this season, because of what it has turned into, and you see that with this field, we've got a very, very strong field. It feels like a major championship, and particularly a Colonial, which is a major championship-style golf course. I think what you're going to see out of Koepka is you're going to see Brooks Koepka play some great golf. Now, here's what you need to know about Koepka. He's only played in this tournament one time, played back in 2018. He finished second to Justin Rose, but he shot 63 on Friday and 63 on Sunday. He's comfortable on this golf course. I think he's got the chip back and the chip back. And I believe, like I told you, my short list, that guy's on my short list.
All right, let me give you, Michael, before we go, let me give you these 4 American players, all young. For the next 5 years, you tell me what order you want them in terms of performance. They're all ranked in the top 15 players in the world.
Okay.
Cantley, Schauffele, DeChambeau, and Finau. Give me what order in terms of how good they're going to be. They're all ranked in the top 15. They're all American players. They're all young or close to young. And they're all in the same boat. None of them are superstars yet. None of them are household names yet, but every golf fan knows all four of them. They're all dangerous players. Which players, how do you rank them? If I say to you, rank them for me for the next 5 years and how they're going to perform, go ahead.
Schauffele, number 1. Play number 2. DeChambeau, number 3. And Finau, number 4. I worry about Bryson because of all the mass that he has put on. I think that this mass and this quest for clubhead speed is going to be something that may hurt him physically and may set him back. Now, I know in the short term it may help, but as I have studied, and interesting playing this week is a guy named Keith Clearwater. Keith Clearwater won this event a number of years ago. Now, Keith is of senior age now, and Keith put on a ton of weight, and he lost his game. He was one of the best ball strikers out there. In fact, he went around, when he won, he went around Colonial 64-64 on the weekend to win his championship there. But he started putting on major mass, and he lost his game in a lot of different areas, specifically in the short game area. Now, why is that important? Because Bryson DeChambeau, when you put on that kind of mass and you have your hands that high, all of a sudden what you're doing is you're stressing out the body. And in order for you to be a great short game player, you need to have some soft in your hands. And when you have that kind of stress and tension in your arms and your hands, it's very difficult for you to feel some of these shots. So I would have DeChambeau to me is sort of a question mark, but I've got him third. I think Finau is a really good player. I just think he struggles with winning. Patrick Cantlay is a guy who could certainly make that step. I don't know if I see the grit in him that I see in Xander Schauffele. And Xander Schauffele, to me, is a guy who I think he's going to win major championships, and I think he's going to win more than one. I don't know that he's going to get to 5, but I think he's going to have at least multiple major championships. And in the next 5 years, I expect Xander Schauffele to emerge as a top echelon player on the PGA Tour.
Who would you have more faith in right now, Adam Scott or Tommy Fleetwood?
Boy, that's a good question, and I know there's one very, very interested listener in this. So here's what I will tell you. I think what I worry about with Fleetwood is he also too has a challenge winning on the American Tour. He's a very, very gifted player. There's no question about it. And why
do these guys who play so well over in Europe struggle over here?
There's that question of, do I belong? I mean, it's a natural question. Do I belong? And Paul Azinger got in a lot of trouble. He got questioned by a lot of the players when he said what he said about earlier this year down at Honda about the ability to win. And even though that they've won on the European Tour, it's not like winning on the PGA Tour. And you know what? That might have been going out on a limb, but there's some truth in that statement. And it's because we all know that the PGA Tour is the number one tour in professional golf. And it doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that the players on the European Tour aren't great players and can't win on the PGA Tour. It's another thing to believe that you can win. And I think it's a lot easier if you play the tour all year round, full time, to start to think, you know what, I can win on this tour and then win multiple times. And I think if Tommy Fleetwood played the PGA Tour full time and did not worry about the European Tour, much to say, play the same sort of schedule that McIlroy plays. And if he did that, I believe that he would emerge as a real top talent. But at this point, I'd bet Adam Scott. I just think Adam Scott has.
If you had one tournament to win right now for your life this week, considering injuries, considering conditioning, considering everything, and everybody in the world is there, who would you take?
So I would take Jon Rahm.
Okay.
I think
so right now you think his game's the most complete game in the world.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Rory McIlroy is 92nd on tour in strokes gained putting.
He can't putt. He can't putt. I'm sorry, he can't putt. And he can never putt in a big spot.
And so if you take that and you go, okay, he's the number one player in the world and he struggles putting, then, and like the one thing that you can say about the greatest players who, like Nicklaus or Woods, is these when they need to make a putt, they make a putt.
They never missed a big putt in their career. When they're in their prime, they never missed a big putt.
And here's the thing. In order for you to be a great big putter, you have to want to have the moment. And that's the thing that I have admired about great athletes is they want the ball at crunch time. Jordan wants the ball. Wayne Gretzky wants the puck. Like, elite athletes want the moment. And I don't get the sense that Rory McIlroy wants to stand over. Like, I ask myself this question. I ask you this question. We all remember the putt that Tiger Woods made in the PGA Championship on the final hole with Bob May to force the playoff. And everybody goes, that was one of the greatest putts ever. That's a 6-foot putt, a little bit outside the left edge. I ask myself, would Rory McIlroy have made that putt?
No chance.
And I don't. Okay, and so at that
Not
point,
only that, the other day, we watched the Masters where he was about to take control of the tournament. He had a 3-foot putt for eagle, and he missed it.
Missed it. And so I look at this.
You could close out at 53.
Who's the guy that would make that putt? Well, we saw Dustin Johnson miss that putt in the U.S. Open at Chambers Bay. He had a chance to force the playoff.
Perfect example. He can't make a putt either for his life. He just can't. Otherwise, he'd win a million tournaments if he could make a putt.
John Rahm can make the putt. Jason Day can make the putt. And so, to me, who can make the putt and who can hit the shots? John Rahm's my guy.
Hey, he is right now on the verge, no question. Thanks very much. Enjoy. It's good to have golf back. We'll talk in the next couple of weeks. Thanks very much.
I look forward to it, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Casamigos Tequila, as always, brings you the program, brought to you by those who drink it. We'll see you tomorrow.
She serves two.